This is Reality Dispatch by Jim Mins.
Monday. The man walked into the dry cleaners as unassuming as any other on a cold morning. Victor barely registered his features, which would come to pose a problem later in the week as it turned out. "I'd like these by Thursday if possible," he said as he handed over the business shirts. Victor looked them over briefly for any obvious signs of complexity and quoted the man a figure of $45, to which the man agreed. It wasn't until 3:30 that afternoon that Victor inspected the man's threads and saw to his horror the unmistakable holes pepper-marked in the chest area that were surrounded by dried pools of blood. He called his wife and business partner of 47 years, Winnie, over to inspect. "This a joke, you think?" he wondered. "It looks like gunshots," she said, confirming his suspicion. "It might be a joke," he asked. "Or it might not," she said, poking a finger through the hole above where the right nipple would rest. They both agreed that the best course of action would not be to clean the clothes and instead notify the authorities to inspect and see if it matched anything that was currently the subject of an investigation. Thursday. Victor was nervous all day, and it played out slowly for his stomach, which would spurn on his urge to relieve his bowels on 4 or 5 occasions. The lead detective devised the plan to have the unknown man arrive to pick up what he believed would be his cleaned and pressed shirts, only for the officers to swoop him under the guise of a mini interrogation and then arrest him on suspicion of some violent act. The man, who Victor did not recognize, walked into the dry cleaners at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The detectives and other plainclothed officers were spread throughout the main street, drinking countless orders of coffee and playing a pantomime of normality. The man requested his shirts and presented his ticket. Victor nodded and proceeded to the back, where there was a hidden microphone that was waiting to hear his code word. "Oh, that was the sauce stains," he yelled, probably more loudly than was rehearsed. He had to be sure that the sting would succeed, though, for the man may be dangerous, and Victor had gone to so much trouble already. "No," said the man, "it was my blood. I'm sorry, I should have explained. I was shot." The man spoke with a matter-of-fact tone that took Victor by surprise. "Are you all right?" he replied in a shock that made him forget about the oncoming siege that was to take place in the doorway of his store. "Oh yeah, those things don't affect me like normal people," the man said as he held out a palm to receive the clean clothes. "Well," Victor began to break the news to him that his clothes were not, in fact, cleaned when the party of plain-clothed detectives arrived and yelled for the man to freeze. Guns were drawn in preparation for his sudden attack. The man smiled and raised his hands before he was even asked to. "What is the problem, officers?" "Why do you have blood on these shirts, huh? You hurt someone?" the lead detective asked. He was a man of solid stature, and he removed a set of cable ties from his bum bag to subdue the man's wrists. "I hurt no one, but you might get hurt by way of example," the man replied. "You threatening me?" the detective asked as he seized the man's wrist. The man lunged for the detective by the throat as soon as his hand was touched, which caused a series of gunfire to erupt in the shop front. Victor ducked behind his counter and saw the ornaments above his table shatter as they were hit by countless streams of bullets that were meant for his customer. When the shooting subsided, there was silence. Victor took this as a cue to slowly stand, although he was afraid of what he might see. Instead of being confronted with a bloodbath on the floor of his shop, he saw the man who was his customer standing over the detective. He was shielding him from the gunfire. There were bullet holes littered all over his back, but the man stood as if none of his injuries registered. He turned to face Victor. "I paid you in full on Monday and my shirts are not clean. I would like a refund." Victor pointed at the man's current attire. "You could do with another item of cleaning. How about you give me that one too and I'll get them all sewn and cleaned," he suggested. He was amazed he was able to speak at all to the man. He blurted out the request out of fright rather than politeness. "Sounds fair," the man said. He took his blood-stained shirt off and handed it to Victor. It was at this moment that the detectives, all of who had their jaws on the floor, lowered their weapons. "Not like normal people, you said?" Victor asked the man. He didn't respond and proceeded out the door. He turned back and suddenly addressed Victor once more. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. None of the detectives followed him. No one had seen a man cheat death before and walk away smiling. The lead detective stood to face his colleagues. His face was pale.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.